All right, well, I'm going to give just an official opening. Welcome everybody to our Zoom chat with PluggedIn KidMin, EMMC. Today we want to talk a little bit about volunteer culture. What is it? What could it look like? What we can do as leaders to help it along. And before, when I was preparing for this, I did a really quick Bible search of the word volunteer because I thought, well, I don't really think that is in the Bible, or is it? I don't know. So I did a really quick word search and lots of verses actually came up. And a lot of the verses were like volunteering your time or sacrifice or offering. And I thought, well, Jesus technically was a volunteer, and so were his disciples, right? They didn't get paid for what they did. Then the verse 2 that actually stood out to me was Ephesians 2:10. For we are God's handiwork, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which God prepared in advance for us to do. So each one of us has something in us, a gift, a talent, an ability that God has created for us to do. And I love that verse because it's intentional. God set it up for us to do in advance. And so along with volunteer culture, so we want to talk about how to create a healthy volunteer culture. And so what I was thinking about is if it is a healthy volunteer culture, what does that look like? So I thought about what I would want my whole volunteers, what I would want them to be, or what I would like them to feel even, or what kind of attitude I'd like them to have. So I thought if they're a healthy volunteer, they would know your mission. So why do you do children's ministry? What is the ultimate goal that you have as a children's ministry? Ours is leading children to become fully devoted followers of Christ. And I think most of our volunteers could tell you that, probably 99.9% of them could. And also, not that they can just say it back to you, but they're excited about it too, right? Another thing I was thinking of is they're recruiting others to join your ministry. I think some of my best recruiters have been volunteers or are volunteers, and they've even just invited them to sit in the class with them. And it's a beautiful thing when that happens, when friends or others or family even comes and sits down with them. Also, they stay for the next year and the next term and the next term. They're not burnt out, right? Second last, I was going to say that they're gaining a community. That children's ministry, the volunteers here, we're a family, we're a team. And then lastly, volunteers feel like they have a voice. So if something's not going the way they want or thought, or they feel like they can come to you and approach you and ask you, why do you do this? Or maybe we could change it like this. So, and then saying all that, I wanted to let you know too that our volunteers at Your Own Church are not all that because I am human, I mess up, I forget things, they are human. So I want to let you know I'm not coming from a place of perfection when it comes to volunteer culture. It's something that we've worked on for many, many years, and continue to do so. And I think depending on who comes in your ministry, maybe even that changes a little bit, right? With even the generations that are serving in your ministry. Carolyn and I are going to share a little bit about myself, I'm going to give you 3 points of what I've been working on. And then it kind of gives you kind of a broad look of how you can create a volunteer culture. And then Carolyn's going to give you a little more practical. Is that correct, Carolyn? Yeah. So Carolyn will give you kind of like a little more like practical, what are things that you could start, what are things you could do. And then after that, so we could have some questions, even if you want to write them down in the chat so we don't miss them, do that. Or we can just have a roundtable discussion at the end, and then we can go from there. So how about I pray first, and then we can jump in to our discussion here. God, we thank you for tonight. God, I thank you for Sasha and Stanley and for Carolyn, and Lord, for all the other children's ministry leaders in our conference, the youth ministry leaders in our conference. God, I pray for each leader that has that needs to recruit volunteers, that has recruited volunteers, that is leading volunteers. Lord, I pray for their heart to be compassionate towards their volunteers. I pray that they would lead their volunteers well. And God, I just pray that through this discussion, not only would Carol and I have suggestions, but we would also receive some awesome insight to what is being done in other churches as well. In Jesus' name, amen. Alrighty, so I have three words that I want to go through. The first word is inspire. So when you are recruiting volunteers, are you inspiring them with what your ministry does? So you need to let them know what they do matters. And if you're part of our group, Plugged In KidMin, you know my training, I posted it on there. It was called Why Does It Matter? Why does it matter that you're in children's ministry? And the main thing that we came to as a conclusion was kids matter, or children's ministry matters because kids matter to Jesus. And so we've adopted that. And then also, when you are recruiting, are you inspiring them that their mission means something? I give them this visual that they have 40 hours in a year to make an impact on a child, because not every kid's going to be there every Sunday, or you take a Sunday off here or there, or so it's not going to be the 52 Sundays a year. Maybe it's closer to that than 40. I don't know at your church, but I let them know you have 40 hours in a year to impact a child for Christ. So let's do all we can in that 40 hours to make it the best hours of their year. So I make sure that they know what their mission is, what their goals are. Why does it matter that they do what they do? And then also, are we training them? Are we letting them know what to expect? I'm guessing your most amazing volunteer now probably wasn't the most amazing volunteer when they first started, because we learn, right? We learn by doing, we learn by being trained. So are we being intentional as leaders too, to train our volunteers to be great volunteers, and for them to even know what they're supposed to do? I know at one point I caught myself thinking like, oh, why don't they do this? I'm like, Annie, have you ever led them to do that? So make sure that we are inspiring, we are telling them what their job descriptions are, what they're supposed to be doing. So that's number one, inspire. Number two is empathy. This took me a little bit, and maybe it is because I'm coming from a paid position, but understanding where your volunteers are coming from. I think for myself, I just thought, why aren't they just as passionate as I am? Why can't they find the time during the week to prepare like I do? Well, they don't do this for a 40-hour-a-week job. They have jobs, they have families, they have school, they have a 3-year-old throwing a temper tantrum before they go to church. These are very real people with very real lives. So are we setting the expectation too high for them? Are we listening to them? One thing that I implemented this year was to send a volunteer email on Wednesdays. because even for myself, sometimes preparing for Sunday morning, I found myself, it's getting like later and later and later on in the week. So I'm going to send an email on Wednesdays, and I told them, you don't have to do anything with the email except read it. And in the email, it goes over our bottom line. So the thing that we want the kids to remember and take home, it goes over what we're learning about and the verses, and then also our memory verse. And then it goes over any really cool stories that happened last Sunday or anything like that to inspire them as well. So it's something to get their gears already going for Sunday morning, but it's not like sit down and prepare for your lesson today now. It's just, let's read these little snippets and already get our hearts and minds prepared for what we're going to do on Sundays. Also, just want to make sure I don't miss anything here. Is your family ministry schedule at your church too much for volunteers? Are we asking them to serve on Wednesdays, but also on Sundays? Are we asking maybe mom to do this and dad to do that and the kids to do this, but everything just seems so scattered? So that's something even as a church that we are going through right now, is how can we as a church make sure the family is together and not so spaced apart? And maybe that will also free up more volunteers as well. So empathy, I think for those that are more on a paid position, it is easy to just think that they are as passionate, as ready, as scheduled as you are. So I really had to tell myself, especially when I was younger and I was just newly married, I didn't have any kids. I was just my husband and I, and I'm like, why? And then my lead pastor reminded me, hey, they have lives too, you know? And it's like, oh yes, they do. Yes, they do. So it was humbling, and it was good to learn that. Number 3, last one here is community. So when you invite your volunteers to volunteer, invite them into a community. And so if you join any kind of sports team, you're probably going to get a jersey. So I'll show you ours. This is one of our t-shirts. We have them in blue and orange. And on the front, we have our mission, leading kids to become fully devoted followers of Christ, with our church logo. And then on the back, we have our strategy that we use: orange, red, the love of the family, plus yellow, the light of the church equals orange. 2 influences are better than 1. So that's what all our volunteers are wearing on Sunday mornings. Well, most of them, if they remember to wash them, which I hope they do. So sometimes I tell them, you know what, just keep them in your classroom. It's not like they're going to get that dirty. So I love that we can be a family and a team, be part of a team. Also, we eat as a team. So normally we have some kinds of snacks on Sunday mornings, whether it's me picking up donuts or if I made cookies the weekend before or whatever. We've done volunteer lunches in the past. Usually I try and schedule one once a year for sure, where we all eat a lunch together. On Sunday morning, we do something called huddle time. So before our Sunday school runs, we have one at 9 o'clock and one at 10:30. We meet at least 15 minutes before that just to go over what we're learning about that Sunday. And then also I ask, like, hey, can I pray for you about anything? It can be praises, it can be prayer requests, and we pray together as a team for each other, which is very special. Also, we do training as a team. Last year, we hopped into Awesome KidMin conference. That was in Winnipeg. And we just did it virtual, and we set up different rooms downstairs as breakout rooms, and it was really fun for us to do that all together. And we ate and we had snacks and we laughed, and it was really good. We learned together, which was really good. And lastly, as a community, I just wanted to put out that we like to appreciate our volunteers. It can be big, it can be little. I'm just going to give you an example of what I did last year. I did socks I set up a Christmas tree downstairs in our Sunday school wing, and I put these all over the Christmas tree, and it says on here, you knock my socks off. Thank you for being totally amazing. Merry Christmas. So I love punny gifts, love them a lot. This year I'm going to give them a mini jar of Nutella, and I'm going to let them know that I'm going to go nutty without them. So just little silly things that put a smile on their face. I love to do, just to let them know that, hey, I see you. You guys are awesome. Thank you for doing what you're doing. So yeah, those are the three things that I thought about, that we've been working on. We've come a really long way. We started from a culture of, hey, we need bodies downstairs to teach our children. Will you do that? To this today, where people can spout off the mission no problem. They know what their role is, they know what they're doing, and they're volunteering year after year. So it is possible for sure to change your culture. I think it takes time for sure, and depending on where you are and your culture too, even like your culture in your city, in your town, in your church, it could be different too. But yeah, those are things that we've kind of implemented over, I would say, the past 10 years. I hope that was helpful.
Some of the things that Annie mentioned are things that were on my list as well. I have found in the past that with when I ask people to help out with Sunday school or VBS or midweek, that if I am able to give them an idea what I'm expecting from them as far as what their role is and what we're requiring of them, that makes it a lot easier for them usually to say yes. I find that we have a lot more positive responses when they know exactly what they're signing up for. And in the last few years, we have done a lot of work at our church to really clarify our vision and purpose for children's ministry. And so our foundation for it is teaching kids to know, love, and serve Jesus. So we've really kind of focused on the know, love, serve part. And then we're basing that on the verses from Deuteronomy 5, where it talks about teaching your kids when you're sitting at home and when you're walking along the road, and basically incorporating faith into every aspect of life. So it's a lifestyle and not just a Sunday morning activity, right? So those are some things that we've, I think, done on the intentionality side, which makes a big difference. I like to do an orientation meeting at the beginning of the year, just to discuss those kinds of things, and we like to provide some opportunities too for training events and that sort of stuff throughout the year. Awesome KidMin is a really good, the Awesome KidMin conference is a really good one for that. I'm a planner and I'm an organizer, sometimes maybe a little bit to my detriment, but I do like to plan and organize well for the things that I can control, because there's a lot of things that you can't. And so if you can kind of eliminate some of those stresses for yourself and for your team by planning and organizing well ahead of time, I find that it does kind of help to cut down on some of the chaos that can naturally happen with kids and just plans kind of unraveling a little bit, just because there's stuff happens, right? I think it's also important to make sure that your KidMin volunteers have the tools that they need to do their jobs well. So this is an area where I'm going to say we have not done probably as well as we could, but it's something that we're working at trying to do better. So we find too, we see more and more kids that have like special considerations or like either learning disabilities or physical challenges that make it harder for them to be more, for our stuff to be more inclusive. And so like those are areas too where we maybe sometimes need to bone up on some specialized things just to make sure that these kids and families can have a meaningful Sunday experience too. I like to take a look at who we've got and trying to put people in roles that match their gifting so that they can feel successful and that they can be the most effective. And sometimes it's a matter of trying something and trying to navigate that and figuring out if it's a good fit or not, but to kind of help guide people along in that process. Another thing that is important would be to offer support, encouragement, and affirmation. And this is something that Kathy Dick from Awesome KidMin Conference has said in a few of her sessions, and it's really stuck with me. If you see it, say it. So just being sure to just recognize and acknowledge if you see someone like on your team or whatever, or a kid even, that there's something there that you think you could encourage someone by affirming them for what they're doing. That's really, really important. And like Annie mentioned, the gestures of appreciation, whether it's a dinner, a small note, or a short note, or a card, small gift, whatever, just different things throughout the year. Sometimes those come at just the right time to give someone a little bit of a boost if they're struggling. Because I think we sometimes are quite results oriented, and with kids, we don't often see results right away, which makes it hard. And so just that idea that we're planting seeds, and to not get discouraged if we don't see immediate results. I think that's another expectation that's important to communicate, so that people don't get disillusioned if you don't see leaps and bounds in improvements. Provide opportunities for rest. So a couple of things that we do is we have a holiday schedule that we implement. So we typically, I guess we've chosen not to typically have Sunday school on long weekends or during natural pauses in the school year. So spring break, Christmas break, summer holidays, those are times when we just take some respite and kind of just let everyone have a chance to breathe and exhale. I find too that it's, the year is, even if we have like 32, 33 Sundays a year, that's a lot. And I guess this year we've actually expanded our Sunday school time so that it's an hour and 20 minutes, which is 20 minutes longer than what it was before. And so it is asking for a bigger time commitment. And so just to kind of build in some breaks to the year, just to help encourage longevity in our staff. And also recognize, that there might be people that can't work or help out on a full-time basis. So maybe they could benefit from, partnering with someone or being involved on a rotational basis. That's a good solution. And then recognizing too, if there's people that, have been at it for a really long time, and maybe they just need a rest. And so just being gracious and offering people a sabbatical if they need one. Connecting, meeting regularly is helpful. And another thing is to remember to pray for your team regularly. This is another area I will admit I could do much better. In the past, I've sometimes put together a ministry calendar that I hang up in my office. So I would have like all of my team members listed on that calendar. And so it was just serving as a reminder, on this and this day, these are the people on my team that I'm praying for. So just to be intentional in doing that, and not even just so far as their what they're contributing to church, but a lot of them have other community involvements, or like Annie was saying, like their parents, or providing care for their own parents or family members, whatever. And so kind of keeping in mind some of those ways to support them too. And I think looking for longevity is great, and adding new people to the team for a balanced perspective and just to maintain some diversity is good too, but to have some good overlaps there, so you're not building a team from square one every year. It would be very challenging. a couple of things for myself. I mentioned a few things that I have struggled with, but a couple of other areas that I'm kind of pushing myself to grow a little bit more. I sometimes am a little too focused on doing and not enough on being. So maybe a bit more of a, Martha versus Mary kind of situation. So kind of, making sure that I'm not too busy on the doing part and keeping focused on the mission and the purpose. I also need to remind myself sometimes not to be too hyper focused on details and don't get too caught up in striving for perfection. And it's okay if it's like a little rough around the edges, a little bit messy. It makes it a little bit more natural and organic, and it's okay if it's not perfect. Like I mentioned before, the encouragement and affirmation piece, I'm working hard at trying to do better at that and just make sure that I'm being attentive so that I can be perceptive to the things around me and not distracted so that I don't notice. So those are a few things that I was thinking about as I was just kind of considering what would be some practical ways to create and maintain a good volunteer culture.
I love if you see it, say it. I think once everyone's dismissed in our Sunday school, it is like chaos. Like everyone's like running every which way. So to catch people on the way out, I think is very good, and to let them know like, hey, I seen that and that was great. How often do we love those little nuggets of affirmation when we get a text or something, right? And yeah, the rest, I love that we do a similar schedule where we take summers off, and we do Christmas break. We don't do long weekends so much, but Christmas we do take 2 Sundays off, and I think that makes when I ask them to serve for a whole school year, it makes it easier to say yes, because they know like I have summer off. I don't need to volunteer during this time. But then there are those star volunteers that do VBS yet for the week and stuff like that. So, but it's really made a difference where we've taken a break like that. Sashay, you had a question. How do you find out what your volunteers need when you ask and you don't get any responses? You are not alone. Seriously. So many times I've asked like, hey, what do you need? What do you this? I will provide it for you, and I get no responses. The thing that popped into my mind when I first started as children's director, I sent out a questionnaire, an anonymous one. There was no names attached, nothing, because I found like I just didn't build that trust yet with everybody. They didn't quite yet know who I was, or they didn't quite know what they could say to me without hurting my feelings or something like that. So I've sent out anonymous questionnaires like, hey, what's going well? What's not going well? What's something that you would like to see changed? Do you have your supplies? Do you have this and that? That's one thing too that Carolyn mentioned with the special needs ministry. Yeah, we're a little lacking on that too, but does that kind of answer what you're thinking there? Yeah, okay.
If I sometimes see something that I kind of sometimes I try and flip the question around too. Like if I see something, I might and have an idea about how it could be made easier. I've sometimes said like, do you think it would benefit you to do this, or would this help you, and like make suggestions. Sometimes that to kind of turn that around that way, giving them an idea of what might make it easier sometimes helps them to articulate what they might need if they maybe don't know exactly how to voice that. Or
yeah, that's really good.
I would say that our churches heard Caroline talking about the vision changing, like I think because of the leading with vision classes, it kind of spurred something. What was that, the beginning of the year? And it's been so exciting to see the chain effect as the as ministerial and leaders in the church caught that vision or that passion to want to define our vision so that we as a church know where we're going, then it's kind of trickling down into our children's ministry. Okay, how does our vision then line up with that? How does that apply to our kids? So that's something that we as a committee are trying to get, written down so that we can then share it with our team. I would say though that before there was children's church here, we had Sunday school, and that's kind of like a different structure, right? So our children's ministry is still very fresh. And I'm just wondering, even just making the shift from, like, even just the words children's ministry, I've been trying to sneak that in, or being a part of our team or joining our community. Like, I don't think people really see that. Do you guys have any thoughts on how we can make the move towards, unity and people seeing like, we're not just filling this spot. Like, this is, I don't know. Sometimes I feel like children's ministry gets the leftovers of not just stuff, but like energy. Like we don't want that. I mean, this is the next generation of leaders of children who will make a difference. And I'm just struggling with how to help people see that, or how to articulate what I'm feeling, like, I don't know if that made sense.
If I'm hearing you correctly, like, I think, like, when I first started, it felt like babysitting, or like that's kind of the mindset that people had, that we're just going to keep the kids busy for this hour because mom and dad need to go to their Sunday school, or mom and dad need to go to their service. So I think what really helped is definitely the vision. For us, our mission statement is only one word off of our church mission statement. So our church is leading people to become fully devoted followers of Christ. We are leading children to become fully devoted followers of Christ. So I would encourage you, if your church has already like embraced a vision statement, maybe even just plug in a word or two that it makes it children's ministry focused. But I think what also really helped was our lead pastor even just saying, like, hey church, Sunday school is not babysitting. There's lots of ministry happening, and even telling stories of what happens in our Sunday school. And then, training your volunteers with, hey, this is how we impact children. I think even like testimonies when people get baptized, that has really even like, hey, I've been in Sunday school from this long and I knew already then that Jesus loved me. That has spoken volumes too. But yeah, I would for sure start with your volunteers, letting them know why we do what we do. Keeping your vision statement close to what your whole church's is. That way, number one, people don't have to learn another statement, but then also it's just so close that, hey, mom and dad are doing this, and so are you for the kids. So yeah, I think that would be my 2 cents.
Yeah, I like all of those points that you made, and I would say I have seen the benefits of like having the pastoral staff really. If they place an emphasis or like really support and encourage children's ministry, that goes a long ways in making the congregation more aware. And I think for us, another big thing, which is like, I would say a positive takeaway from the pandemic and the changes we had to make to our programming, is that our children's ministry was less sequestered. So it was more out front and center in our church life, because we couldn't meet in our groups or whatever. We had that family church segment that was part of our church service, and so kids, youth, young adults, parents, grandma and grandpa, everybody got to see the Bible story and the object lesson and participate in the kids' praise and worship segment. And so I think that created a lot more awareness for what was happening in children's ministry, because the kids weren't just off in some corner of the church somewhere. They were actually part of the worship service. So now with what we're doing, we're back to a little bit more of a, well, somewhat traditional Sunday school structure, but we're utilizing a lot of different spaces in the church. So that requires some transitions. So even just seeing kids moving from one space to the next requires them to go through the foyer, and it's just a reminder, right? Like there's life, there's vitality, there's energy. The kids are like here and they're an important part of our church family. So just very much focusing on, just creating awareness and not having it just get tucked away like a silo ministry somewhere.
Do you guys have any kind of mentorship that it goes on at your church, like with people who might be interested, or like who you think you've seen, or who like junior youth leaders might have suggested, oh, this person might be like in advance before they reach the time where they would be a part of your ministry? Do you have something that helps prepare them or give them an idea of what it might involve?
So we don't have like an official mentorship program, but a lot of times what I'll do if a brand new volunteer wants to volunteer, I ask usually a seasoned volunteer if they would take them under their wing. And then like a lot of times if like youth who are very motivated and excited, I usually put them with my parents because my mom has no problem asking them like, hey, next Sunday, do you want to do the lesson? And then they're like, what, me? And we've gotten many wonderful small group leaders by other small group leaders asking their teen helpers like, hey, do you want to try it next week? Like even just planning one craft or planning one activity. So I try and partner people up like that so that, it shows them what they're capable of and what their potential could be. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes they just want to be a helper, and that is totally okay too. We need ththose people. But yeah, we've gotten a couple leaders from that, which has been really cool to see.
I think making sure that you have a good pairing is really important. I have some people on my team too that are practically lifers. Like they've been involved for 10 plus years or whatever, but they are really, really good at getting newcomers involved, especially like youth and like younger leaders or whatever. And it's very empowering for them, right? Because they build that confidence, and someone believes in them that they can do it and is providing them with the support and encouragement. So that's a huge part in making them feel successful.
So I just wanted to wrap up our time. If ever there's any other questions, pop them in the group discussion wall. You can definitely message or email me. I will be out on mat leave in a month, but I'll be still part of the group, so I'll respond when I can. Well, why don't I pray one more time, and then we can close our time together. God, we thank you for the 3 churches that are represented here at this chat right now, and we thank you for each and every volunteer. Church just doesn't happen without volunteers. And God, I thank you for each and every one, for their servant hearts, for the people that they impact, for the kids that they impact. We thank you for their willingness to serve and to give. And Lord, I pray that you would energize our volunteers. This can be a busy season with school, with church itself, with holidays, all those things. God, I pray that you would give our volunteers rest when they need rest, and motivation and oomph when they need it too. And God, I just pray too that we would lead well as leaders, And that we would lead from a place of serving our volunteers as well. In Jesus' name, amen.